It's the true story of Europe. It's the story the politicians don't want you to hear, because it shows how they've deceived us and betrayed our nation. Only in 1994 did Chancellor Kohl's foreign policy spokesman, speaking on behalf of the ruling party of Europe's dominant nation, Germany, clearly reveal the true plan. The plan is to create a federal European superstate. Into it will be merged up to 25 ancient European nations, including our own. This new country, called Europe, will have one parliament, one government, one court of justice, one currency, one flag, and one anthem. That has been the plan all along. But those who favoured it knew the people of Europe would never accept it. They would never willingly surrender their freedoms to become just a province in a vast European superstate. So what did the politicians do? They conspired to keep the truth from the people.
From 1973 onwards, the slow but consistent transfer of power from Westminster to Brussels through successive treaties our own politicians signed became known as the acquis communautaire. It was nicknamed the ratchet, for once powers had been given to Brussels by the member state, they could never be returned.
Initially I thought, like everybody else, that we had joined a common market, and what could be nicer and more friendly and sensible and economically wise to do. But since then, in 1975, when we had the vote to remain in that, so we were told, it's become one or two things further than just a common market. It then became, a few years later, a European Economic Community, then a European Community. It's now the European Union, with all sorts of controls and restrictions, regulations, and we're fast approaching, via this new constitution, something that the French have already named potentially a United States of Europe. And I'm not at all sure that that's what I and many others voted to join back in 1975.
In black and white, the draft constitution wording confirms Brussels will exercise competence and primacy over member states' own laws. For the British, this will mean being stripped of any remaining independence, losing control over our foreign policy and armed forces, the handing over of our legal system and law enforcement to the European Union, the scrapping of the pound sterling to be replaced by the euro, the handing over of our remaining currency and gold reserves to the European Central Bank, and the total regulation of British domestic and international trade by the European Union.
I've already noticed that the job of running Britain is increasingly being carried out in Brussels not by British politicians, but by unaccountable foreign committees most in this country have never even heard of, let alone voted into power. These unelected, inscrutable forums dictate what citizens across the Eurozone can and can't do, down to the last detail. Henceforth, Britain is to be ruled from the new Europe, by the new Europe, and for the benefit of the new Europe. The powers driving this new superstate have always been, indeed as they are today, France and Germany. Laws of the European Union are drafted not by the Euro Parliament, but by the EU Commission, one of three powerful forums in which the true might of the Union resides. Members of these forums are not elected to their positions, nor, we are told, will they ever be.
When cornered, politicians and public servants routinely tell the British that the EU is just a trading partnership. Yet, underneath the surface, a different picture has emerged. In 2001, a market trader was convicted for selling a pound of bananas weighed using British imperial measures instead of grams and kilos. British District Judge Morgan, in passing judgment upon the hapless metric martyr, stated, "We are now living under a new legal order. The 1972 European Communities Act was a one-off, not an ordinary treaty, but a new way of life. These are new constitutional powers. The British Parliament surrendered its sovereignty in 1972. European laws have overriding force with priority over our British laws. The articles on the supremacy of the British Parliament are now only of historical perspective. They are non-binding.
The new European justice system currently being introduced into the UK is known as Corpus Juris, literally body of law. Corpus Juris is designed completely and permanently to overhaul the British justice system and will include the following.
The scrapping of trial by jury. Henceforth you will face a state-appointed judge who will pronounce you guilty or not guilty. The scrapping of habeas corpus. You are liable to summary arrest without charge. Under Corpus Juris you can be detained without charge or any evidence being presented against you for up to 9 months. The scrapping of innocent until proven guilty. Henceforth, a citizen must prove his innocence against the combined machinery of the state. The scrapping of double jeopardy, or not being tried for the same offence twice. Under EU sanction, Jack Straw, while Home Secretary, gave prosecutors leave to appeal not guilty verdicts if desired. Technically, this could be done repeatedly until the required conviction is secured. The scrapping of non-disclosure. Henceforth, under Corpus Juris, any previous convictions you have will be made available to the court before your trial begins. There is no presumption of innocence.
Being part of the European Union will mean Britain will permanently lose control over her armed forces and foreign policy. The new European army, so enthusiastically pushed by France and Germany, in effect threatens NATO, the organisation that has kept peace in Europe for the past 50 years.
They can use our armed forces, the Crown forces, the Army, the Navy and the Air Force, in the European Rapid Reaction Force. And imagine our forces being under the command of some perhaps French or German general.
And then there's the euro. Joining it will be irreversible, according to Hans Tietmeyer, former president of the German Bundesbank. Monetary union is a path of no return, he states. No subsequent revision or withdrawal of any kind is either legally or politically provided for.
Britain's economy traditionally tracks that of the United States because of our heavy trading on the dollar. So what would be the effect of joining the euro and tying Britain's economy into this one-size-fits-all arrangement with the other nations of the EU?
Brussels wanted to know too, which is why in October 1990 Britain joined something called the European Exchange Rate Mechanism, a dress rehearsal for the euro and monetary union, which effectively locked the British pound into other EU currencies. 23 months of chaos followed. British business suffered its worst recession in 60 years. 100,000 UK businesses went to the wall. Unemployment doubled from 1.5 to 3 million. More bankruptcies were filed than in any previous 2-year period ever. Repossessions of property increased 7-fold. By 1993, over 500,000 of us were at least 3 months in arrears on our mortgages. Britain lost estimated reserves of 68 billion sterling.
And as someone once put it, you may be very friendly with your neighbours, but would you actually hand over complete control of your bank account to your friendly neighbours? Quite probably not. And that's precisely what we would be doing if we joined the euro.
And if you're in Ireland or in Latvia, the euro is going to be great because you're having everything paid for. Unfortunately, it's by us. And I don't think we can afford or sustain that level of payment for that amount of time. If we joined the euro and the same thing happened to our economy as happened to Germany, we could all find ourselves struggling to pay our mortgages.